Imagine, just for a moment, that you are trapped in a nightmare society.
Okay.
And because the universe has this really dark sense of humor, you actually get to choose between two completely different versions of this nightmare.
Wow. Lucky us.
Right. So in option A, you are constantly terrified. I mean, you live in total squalor, the food is practically poison, and you are monitored every single second of the day.
By a brutally abusive state apparatus.
Exactly. One that basically wants to crush your very soul.
So, highly visible, highly painful cage.
Yeah, that's option A. You just chose your poison, which is the nightmare of pain.
Mhm.
But consider option B.
Okay, let's hear it.
In option B, you are genetically engineered from before you're even born to be completely blindly happy.
Sounds a bit better so far.
Well, you're flooded with state-sponsored drugs, given endless mind-numbing entertainment, and you have literally everything you could ever physically want.
But there's a catch.
A huge one. Your freedom, your individuality, and your capacity for deep, meaningful human experience, they've been completely erased.
The nightmare of pleasure.
Exactly. So today, we are putting together the ultimate high school literature study guide, and we're tearing apart the source codes of George Orwell's 1984 and Aldous Huxley's Brave New World.
Which is such a brilliant comparison to make.
It really is. And we aren't here for just a simple book review. We are here to answer a chilling architectural question for you today.
Which is?
Which controls a populace better, fear or pleasure?
That is the ultimate question, isn't it? And we have a really fascinating foundation for this analysis.
We do. We're drawing directly from the original texts of both novels. Huxley published his in 1932, right?
Yeah, 1932. And Orwell followed in 1949. But we also have this incredible letter written by Aldous Huxley himself to George Orwell, directly comparing their two visions.
Oh, wow. I love that we have that direct connection between them.
It's incredible context, because these aren't just entertaining fictional stories. They're highly detailed, deeply researched blueprints of human psychology and political science.
Absolutely. So to really dissect how these states operate, we have to look under the hood.
Right. We need to examine their differing core philosophies on human nature, how they construct their surveillance apparatus, and their weaponization of entertainment.
And there's systematic destruction of objective truth, of course.
Exactly. And ultimately, the psychological endgame, when a citizen decides they've had enough and tries to break the system.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with the foundation.
Good idea.
Because before we can look at how a totalitarian regime controls its citizens, we really have to understand why.
The ultimate goal.
Right. What is the goal of the people in charge? Because the architects of these two societies have diametrically opposed views on what the purpose of a state actually is.
They really do.
So I want to look at Oceania first, which is the setting of Orwell's 1984.
The ruling party there is called Ingsoc.
Yeah, Ingsoc. And they don't even pretend to be building a utopia.
Not at all.
The world they have built is terrifyingly bleak. Like when we meet the protagonist, Winston Smith, he is living in a world of absolute grinding decay.
Yeah, Orwell really wants you to feel that physical deprivation immediately.
That's so visceral.
It is. He grounds the grand political theory in the sensory reality of a rotting apartment building.
And the sensory details are exactly what make it so oppressive. It's London, but it's this London of rotting 19th century houses with cardboard in the windows.
Smelling of boiled cabbage.
Yes. The hallway of Winston's apartment building smells permanently of boiled cabbage and old rag mats. And when he drinks the state-sanctioned alcohol, Victory Gin, it's described as tasting like nitric acid.
Which just sounds awful.
And Winston himself is physically broken down. I mean, he's only 39, but he has this constantly itching varicose ulcer above his ankle.
Right, he's in constant discomfort.
Exactly. Everything is scarce. Everything is painful.
What?
So my question to you is, why?
Why build it that way?
Yeah. If you have absolute power, why build a world that smells like boiled cabbage?
Well, that scarcity, that physical pain, it's not a bug in the system of Ingsoc. It is the central feature.
Wait, really?
Yeah. The party deliberately keeps the population in a state of constant, low-level physical misery.
But what's the benefit of that?
Because a general state of scarcity increases the importance of tiny privileges, which magnifies the power dynamic.
Oh, wow. I see.
Right. If everyone is starving, the person handing out the bread holds the power of a god.
That makes total sense. And it's terrifying.
It gets worse. Orwell goes even deeper into the psychology of the ruling class. Near the end of the book, Winston is confronted by O'Brien.
The architect of the regime.
Exactly. And O'Brien lays out the core philosophy of their rule with chilling clarity. He tells Winston that the party seeks power entirely for its own sake.
So they don't want wealth. They don't want luxury.
Yeah, well,
They just want the boot on the neck.
that's it. O'Brien explicitly mocks the dictatorships of the past. He points to the German Nazis and the Russian communists, criticizing them for being cowards and hypocrites. Because those regimes claimed they seized power unwillingly, and for a limited time, to build some future paradise where all human beings would be equal.
Right. The ends justify the means argument.
Exactly. But O'Brien says Ingsoc makes no such promises. Power is not a means to an end. Power is the end.
That is so dark.
And he then defines power in a very specific, deeply unsettling way. He tells Winston, power is in inflicting pain and humiliation.
Jeez.
He says, power is in tearing human minds to pieces and putting them together again in new shapes of your own choosing.
Wow. That leads right into that famous quote, doesn't it?
It does. He delivers what is arguably the most horrifying line in the book. If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever.
Just forever, no hope.
None. Power, for Orwell's regime, can only be proven through the suffering of the subjugated.
Because if they aren't suffering, how do you know they're obeying?
Precisely. If the subject isn't suffering, how do you know they're obeying your will and not just their own?
You know, I'd actually push back on the sustainability of that model, which I know is something Huxley himself brought up.
He certainly did.
But before we get to that critique, let's pivot to Huxley's Brave New World.
A completely different environment.
The vibe could not be more different. We are no longer in a rotting apartment smelling of cabbage.
No, we are definitely not.
Huxley's regime doesn't start in a prison, it starts in a laboratory.
The Central London Hatchery and Conditioning Center.
Yes. We open the book there, and it is pristine. It is sterilized. It is bathed in harsh scientific light.
And their motto is very different from Ingsoc.
Right. The motto of the world state is community, identity, stability.
Stability being the key word there.
So how exactly are they biologically mass-producing compliance to achieve that stability?
Well, Huxley's vision of totalitarianism begins right in the test tube. They have eliminated natural birth entirely.
So no more parents.
No more parents. To mass-produce compliance, you have to mass-produce the humans themselves. They use something called Bokanovsky's process.
Which is basically an assembly line, right?
Exactly. Think of Henry Ford's assembly line, which revolutionized manufacturing in the early 20th century, and apply that to human biology.
That is so creepy.
It's forced cloning. They shock a single human egg with X-rays and alcohol, causing it to divide and bud until they get up to 96 identical twins.
96.
96 identical people working 96 identical machines.
It's literally industrializing the human soul.
And before these people are even decanted, which is their clinical word for being born, their entire futures are mapped out.
Because they go through the social predestination room.
Exactly. The biology is perfectly tailored to the economic need. They engineer the population into strict castes.
So you have the alphas at the top?
Right. The alphas are the tall, attractive, highly intelligent leaders. But it goes all the way down through betas, gammas, deltas, to the epsilons at the very bottom.
And the epsilons have it the worst.
They do. They are intentionally stunted with chemicals and oxygen deprivation while still in the artificial womb.
Oh my God, on purpose.
On purpose. They are engineered to be semi-morons, perfectly suited for brutal, menial labor.
Wait, I need to stop you there.
Sure.
If you engineer a group of people to do terrible menial labor, aren't they eventually going to realize their lives are terrible and rebel?
You would think so.
I mean, even if they aren't that smart, nobody wants to shovel sewage or work in a sweltering factory.
And that is the absolute genius of Huxley's system. It's where his core philosophy drastically diverges from Orwell's.
How so?
The epsilons don't rebel because they have been biologically and psychologically engineered to love being epsilons.
We love it.
You do. Huxley articulates this brilliantly. He argues that a truly efficient totalitarian state doesn't need a boot stamping on a human face.
Because that causes friction.
Right. A population of slaves can be engineered to love their servitude.
Wow.
If you want absolute, unbreakable social stability, you don't achieve it by torturing people. You achieve it by removing all the reasons they might have to rebel in the first place.
Which means eliminating poverty, disease, uncertainty.
And you eliminate the agony of free choice.
Okay, let me try a metaphor here to see if I am grasping the mechanical difference between these two philosophies.
Go for it.
Let's say human free will is like a wild horse.
Okay.
In Orwell's 1984, the state's approach is to throw that horse in a tiny, dark pen and beat it with a metal pipe every single day until its spirit is completely broken.
Brutal, but accurate.
It obeys because it is terrified of the pipe.
Right.
But in Brave New World, the state's approach is to selectively breed the horse over generations until it no longer has legs and then feed it pure sugar.
That's wow.
It can't run away, and it doesn't even want to because it loves the sugar.
That is a visceral metaphor, but mechanically precise.
It makes sense, right?
Totally. Orwell's state attacks the external manifestation of will through violence. Huxley's state attacks the biological root of will through engineering.
It's proactive versus reactive.
Exactly. And this leads to a very profound philosophical divergence between the two authors, one that actually played out in real life.
Right, the letter. Huxley actually wrote a letter to Orwell after 1984 was published.
He did, offering a critique of Ingsock's sustainability.
I would love to hear what Huxley thought of Orwell's nightmare. Because looking at these two models, doesn't Orwell's reliance on continuous hatred, constant warfare, and manufactured scarcity seem like a system that is just burning an immense amount of energy?
It really does.
It feels like an engine constantly redlining, always on the verge of exhaustion.
That is precisely the critique Huxley leveled at Orwell.
He saw the flaw.
He did. Huxley believed that an oligarchy resting purely on terrorism and physical coercion was bound to fail eventually, because it requires too much effort to maintain.
You constantly have to be swinging the pipe.
Right. Human nature, under constant torture, will eventually break in unpredictable ways, or the torturers themselves will grow weary.
They'll get tired of stamping the boot.
Exactly. Huxley wrote to Orwell, suggesting that the boot-on-the-face method was ultimately inefficient.
So what was Huxley's alternative conclusion?
Huxley's nightmare assumes something far more insidious, that human nature doesn't need to be suppressed. It can be bypassed altogether.
Just go around it.
Yep. If you condition the mind from infancy to desire only what the state provides, the state never has to lift a finger in violence.
It's terrifyingly elegant, but surveillance has a blind spot, right?
What do you mean?
Well, even in a society built on control, you still have to monitor the citizens to ensure the conditioning holds.
Sure.
And if the goals of these two societies are diametrically opposed, like pain versus comfort, suppression versus bypassing, then the architecture of how they watch their citizens must be entirely different as well.
It is entirely different.
This brings us to part 2, the mechanics of surveillance and privacy. I want to start with Oceana again.
Because the surveillance in 1984 has literally defined the modern lexicon of privacy.
Exactly. We get the term Big Brother straight from these pages.
The visual language Orwell uses is iconic for a reason.
Let's talk about that visual language. Winston is walking up those 7 flights of stairs to his apartment, right?
Yeah, because the elevator never works. Another sign of that deliberate scarcity?
Always broken. And there are posters on every single landing.
Enormous posters. It's an enormous face of a man about 45 with a heavy black mustache.
And the terrifying architectural feature is the eyes.
Right. The eyes are designed so they seem to follow you as you move.
And the caption always reads, Big Brother is watching you.
It is an ambient, inescapable reminder of the state's presence.
But, posters are just psychological pressure. They can't actually see you.
Right.
The actual physical enforcement mechanism is the telescreen. How does this piece of technology fundamentally alter the way a human being moves through their own home?
The telescreen is Orwell's masterstroke of technological terror. It's largely inspired by Jeremy Bentham's concept of the panopticon.
Okay, break that down for us. What does it look like?
It's an oblong metal plaque on the wall that receives and transmits simultaneously.
So two-way TV.
Basically, it blasts state propaganda, economic figures, and patriotic music constantly.
Can you turn it down?
It can be dimmed, but it can never, ever be turned off completely. And crucially, it possesses a camera and a microphone.
So they can hear everything.
Any sound Winston makes above a very low whisper can be picked up. Any movement, so long as he's in the field of vision, can be scrutinized by the thought police.
The genius of the panopticon effect, as I understand it, is the uncertainty.
That's the real torture.
The psychological torture of the telescreen is that Winston never knows when he is being watched.
Exactly. He notes that it's just guesswork how often the thought police plug into any individual wire.
You might be watched every second, or you might not be watched for a week.
But because you don't know, you have to live from habit that becomes instinct.
Assuming that every sound is overheard and every movement is watched.
You are forced to perform total loyalty to the state 24 hours a day.
And that performance must be flawless. Because the crimes you can commit in Oceania aren't just physical actions.
No, they are mental. Orwell introduces the concept of thought crime.
Just thinking the wrong thing.
Yes. In Oceania, thinking an unorthodox thought isn't a precursor to a crime. It is the essential crime that contained all others in itself.
As Winston writes in his illegal diary, thought crime doesn't entail death. Thought crime is death.
The moment you harbor a rebellious thought, your eventual vaporization is a mathematical certainty.
I want to dig into the physical manifestation of that paranoia, because there is also face crime.
Oh, face crime is terrible.
It's the word itself implies this impossible standard of control over one's own autonomic nervous system.
Face crime is the offense of having the wrong expression on your face.
Like a nervous tech.
A nervous ticket, an unconscious look of anxiety, muttering to yourself in your sleep, anything that suggests an inner struggle or something to hide.
So if a victory is announced on the telescreen, and you look even slightly incredulous for a fraction of a second,
The thought police will know. The body betrays the mind.
and the punishment is vaporization.
You are wiped from existence.
Yeah.
Every record of you is destroyed. You become an unperson.
In person, God. And if the cameras don't catch your facial tic, your own kids will.
This is one of the most insidious parts of Orwell's architecture.
The weaponization of the family unit.
Yes. Children are put into state-run organizations like the Spy.
And they are systematically turned into ungovernable little savages who worship the party.
It is completely normal for parents over 30 to be terrified of their own children in this world.
The newspapers constantly run stories praising these child heroes.
Kids who eavesdrop on their parents through keyholes and turn them into the thought police for heterodoxy.
The paranoia is absolute. Your sanctuary is your trap.
Right, so hold that feeling of total claustrophobic paranoia, the constant adrenaline spike of knowing a camera is on you.
Got it.
Now, let's contrast that with the surveillance state in Brave New World.
Okay, let's look at the other side.
How does a society built on comfort and pleasure handle the concept of privacy?
Well, from what I read, they just completely eradicate the concept of solitude.
Exactly. In the world state, there are no thought police kicking down doors in the middle of the night.
No telescreen screaming propaganda either.
Nope. Mustafa Mond, one of the 10 world controllers, explains the logic. The state simply engineered people to experience profound psychological distress whenever they are alone.
So they weaponized agoraphobia and monophobia?
They did.
So they don't need to watch you when you're alone because they've structurally guaranteed you are never alone.
Right. The society revolves around forced, constant communal activities.
There's that scene where Bernard Marx, who is one of the few characters who feels a glitch in his conditioning.
Right. He desperately wants a sense of individuality.
He asks this woman named Lenina to just take a quiet walk with him, just the two of them, in nature.
And Lenina is completely baffled.
She is deeply unsettled, almost disgusted by the idea.
Because the world state pushes citizens into things like escalator squash games that require massive groups and elaborate machinery,
Or they attend the solidarity service.
which is basically a state-mandated, drug-fueled orgy.
Wild. So solitude isn't illegal. It is just socially conditioned to be viewed as abnormal, terrifying, and deeply embarrassing.
The architectural difference is brilliant. In 1984, the state has to build billions of cameras and hire millions of police to watch the citizens.
The state is an outside entity imposing its will.
Right. But Huxley realizes that if you strip away individuality at the root, through mass-produced biological casts and relentless childhood conditioning, you don't need external surveillance.
The citizens police themselves.
They police each other. Deviance isn't a crime to be punished in a torture chamber. It's a social faux pas to be cured with peer pressure and a heavy dose of drugs.
This is where we arrive at a really uncomfortable question.
Let's hear it.
In Orwell's world, the camera is actively pointing at you. You know the state is holding a gun to your head.
The cage is made of iron, and you can feel the cold metal of the bars.
It causes intense, continuous psychological stress. But in Huxley's world, there is no camera. There are no bars.
Because your peers, your own biological conditioning, and your desperate craving for the crowd are your cage.
Yeah. If you try to step away into the quiet, your friends pull you back into the light and the noise, thinking they are doing you a favor.
Yeah. Which is scarier.
Right. Knowing you are being watched and hating the watcher, Or never even realizing you have no privacy because you've been engineered to voluntarily surrender it.
It speaks to the illusion of freedom.
The citizen of Oceania knows they are a slave.
But the citizen of the world state believes they are free simply because they are permitted to do everything they want to do.
They just don't realize that the state programmed what they want to do before they were even born.
Exactly.
But even the best programming has glitches.
Of course it does.
Even with genetic engineering or telescreens and thought police, the human mind still wanders. It still processes stress.
The system isn't perfectly seamless.
So when surveillance and social pressure aren't enough to maintain total compliance, the state has to figure out a way to completely occupy the mind off the clock.
Which brings us to entertainment.
Yes. Let's examine how these societies use entertainment and consumption as weapons of suppression.
How does Brave New World drown its citizens in distraction?
Well, in Huxley's world, the pursuit of pleasure isn't merely encouraged. It is a rigid, mandated economic and social duty.
The entire society functions on a hyper-capitalist model taken to its absolute extreme.
The state relies on infinite mass consumption. Underconsumption is practically treason.
There's that hypnopedic slogan they repeat constantly.
Ending is better than mending.
Right. That phrase is literally played into the minds of children while they sleep.
So deep.
The psychological conditioning dictates that if your clothes get a hole in them, you do not fix them.
You throw them away and buy new ones.
Because repairing things halts the factories, and halting the factories threatens the stability of society.
I found the conditioning against nature particularly devious, though. Oh, that part is fascinating.
Why condition people to hate something as harmless as a flower?
Well, the director of the hatchery explains the precise economic logic behind it.
Which is?
In the past, they conditioned the lower castes to love nature, so they would consume transport to go visit the country.
Okay.
But a love of nature keeps no factories busy. A sunset is free.
So they can't monetize it.
Exactly. So they decided to abolish the love of nature entirely. They electroshock the infants whenever they crawl toward a flower.
That's brutal. But they still need them to use the transport, right?
Right, so they condition them to love all country sports instead. And they mandate that all country sports require elaborate, highly manufactured apparatus.
So you can't just go play soccer with a leather ball.
No, you have to play centrifugal bumble puppy, which requires a massive complex machine.
It's a closed loop. You are forced to travel to the country, and you are forced to consume manufactured goods once you are there.
Leisure is just forced economic participation in disguise. And when the games and the shopping aren't enough to keep the existential dread at bay, the world state deploys its ultimate weapon.
Soma.
Soma, it's wild.
Soma is the perfection of psychopharmacology. It is a state-provided drug that is described as having all the advantages of Christianity and alcohol, with none of the defects.
So how does it work?
You take a half gram for a half holiday, a gram for a weekend, and 2 grams for a trip to the gorgeous East, 3 for a dark eternity on the moon.
It cures any gloomy sentiment.
It provides a warm, hallucinatory euphoria, and you wake up clear-headed with no hangover at all.
And the peer pressure around it is intense. If a citizen of the world state feels even a slight twinge of sadness, anxiety, or intellectual frustration, their peers will immediately pressure them to swallow a Soma tablet.
It is chemical suppression of the human condition.
But Huxley goes even deeper into human neurobiology, doesn't he?
He really does.
He understands that an endless plateau of synthetic joy might eventually cause the biological system to rebel. Humans have evolved over millions of years to process stress, fear, and violence.
Huxley recognized that you can't just drug away the adrenal gland.
So for those deeper, darker physiological needs, the world state mandates a monthly treatment called the Violent Passion Surrogate.
The VPS.
I had to read the section on the VPS 3 times because the concept is so wild. Walk us through the mechanics of this.
Mustafa Mond explains that men and women must have their adrenal glands stimulated from time to maintain perfect biological health. It's an evolutionary leftover.
Okay, so how do they safely stimulate it?
Once a month, every citizen is flooded with a chemical cocktail that provides the complete physiological equivalent of fear and rage.
Without actually being in danger.
Mond describes it as experiencing all the tonic effects of murdering someone or being murdered yourself, but without any of the actual inconveniences.
That is insane.
You get the biological release of extreme violence, the racing heart, the adrenaline spike, the cortisol rush, completely safely while sitting in a chair.
The state safely vents the pressure valve of human aggression. You are totally pacified.
Exactly. Contrast that smooth, frictionless synthetic pacification with the grim, grinding entertainment of Oceania in 1984.
Yeah, let's look at Ingsock's version of entertainment, because they don't have the scientific competence to give you a perfect drug without a hangover.
Not even close. They give you victory gin, which we already established is basically toxic sludge.
And instead of pacifying your rage with a chemical surrogate, they weaponize it.
They point it like a fire hose at a manufactured enemy.
Every single day, every citizen is required to participate in a ritual called the 2 minutes hate.
The 2 minutes hate is a terrifying masterclass in mass psychological manipulation and scapegoating.
So the workers are gathered in front of a giant telescreen.
And the face of Emmanuel Goldstein flashes on the screen.
Who is Goldstein exactly?
Goldstein is the primal traitor, the ultimate enemy of the state. He supposedly leads a vast, shadowy underground network called the Brotherhood.
And the screen shows him delivering these venomous attacks on Big Brother, demanding absurd things like freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and peace.
And behind Goldstein's face on the screen, there's always footage of the enemy army Eurasian or Eastasian soldiers marching endlessly, looking huge and terrible.
And the audio track is this hideous, grinding, screeching sound that physically sets your teeth on edge.
Orwell describes how, within 30 seconds, the entire room breaks out into uncontrollable exclamations of rage.
People are leaping up and down in their seats, shouting at the top of their lungs to drown out the maddening, bleeding voice of Goldstein.
A woman behind Winston literally picks up a heavy dictionary and hurls it at the screen.
It's just pure primal anger.
Winston analyzes his own reaction during this ritual, and it reveals the true horror of the event. It is impossible to avoid joining in.
He gets swept up in it.
A hideous ecstasy of fear and vindictiveness, a desire to kill, to torture, to smash faces in with a sledgehammer, flows through the crowd like an electric current.
It turns everyone, even a skeptic like Winston, into a grimacing, screaming lunatic.
The genius of the party is that they take all the repressed misery, the constant hunger, the physical pain of the varicose ulcer, and the sexual frustration.
Which is heavily enforced by the state, by the way.
Exactly, and they expertly direct it outward. They use fear and outrage as the exhaust pipe for a miserable society.
And they don't even bother with the 2 minutes hate for the proles, right?
Right, the lower working classes who make up 85% of Oceania's population.
For them, the state provides something called prolifeed.
The Ministry of Truth has entire massive departments dedicated strictly to producing rubbish for the proles.
What kind of rubbish?
They churn out cheap newspapers containing nothing but sports, crime, and astrology. They produce sentimental songs composed entirely by machines called versificators, completely removing the human element from art.
So no real creativity.
None. They even have a sealed-off subsection called Pornosec that produces the lowest kind of pornography, distributed in sealed packets.
The party uses trash entertainment and base physical stimulation to keep the masses completely distracted from their own subjugation.
As long as the proles are fighting over the lottery and reading astrology, they will never look up and see the boot on their neck.
I want to pause the literary analysis for a second and bring you, the listener, into this.
Let's do it.
Look at your smartphone. Look at the algorithms dictating your social media feeds. Which dystopian mechanism are we seeing play out in the real world right now?
That's a great question.
Are we in Huxley's world, endlessly scrolling through personalized algorithms, using short-form video as a digital soma to numb ourselves, avoid boredom, and escape the discomfort of reality?
Or
Or are we in Orwell's world, engaging in endless online outrage cycles, participating in viral anger, cancel culture, and partisan political baiting that functions exactly like a digital 2 minutes 8?
are we pacified by pleasure, or are we addicted to outrage?
Exactly. What do you think?
I would argue we have managed to create a terrifying hybrid of both.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The user seeks the platform for algorithmic soma to numb the mind with endless content. But the architecture of the platform itself is fueled by the engagement metrics of Orwellian outrage.
Because the algorithm quickly learns that anger holds your attention longer than joy.
Exactly. So it feeds you soma laced with rage. It is Huxley's delivery system pumping Orwell's payload.
That is a deeply unsettling synthesis.
It really is.
But we have to move deeper into the architecture of control, because you can't enforce total fear or total pleasure forever without controlling the very way people process reality.
Right.
If you want absolute power, the battlefield isn't just the physical world or the glandular system, it's the mind itself. We have to look at the war on truth, history, and language.
In 1984, this war on truth is literal, institutionalized, and bureaucratic.
Winston Smith's actual job is at the Ministry of Truth.
which ironically is dedicated entirely to lying. His job is to systematically rewrite historical records.
And it's not just fixing typos to make the party look good. The scale of the deception is absolute.
Give us an example.
Okay, so if Big Brother makes an economic prediction that turns out to be wrong, Winston finds the old newspaper article, rewrites it so the prediction matches what actually happened, and the original document is shoved into a pneumatic tube called a memory hole, where it goes to an incinerator.
They erase unpersons who have been vaporized.
They even change who Oceania is currently at war with.
Right, if Oceania is at war with Eurasia today, then Oceania has always been at war with Eurasia.
Even if they were allied with Eurasia just last week.
Winston wrestles with the terrifying philosophical implications of his job. He realizes that if the party can thrust its hand into the past and say of a specific event, it never happened, that is actually more terrifying than physical torture.
Because reality exists only in the human mind and in records.
If the mind is malleable, and all records tell the same lie, then the lie passes into history and becomes truth.
As the party slogan goes, who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past.
If you control the past, you control the narrative of human progress. You can claim life is better now than it was before, and no one can prove otherwise.
But how does the human brain function if it constantly knows it is altering reality? You can't just lie all day and not go crazy.
To make this system work, the citizens of Oceania must utilize a psychological technique called doublethink.
I want to make sure I understand the mechanics of doublethink because it's more than just being a hypocrite, right?
Far more.
I imagine doublethink is like partitioning a computer's hard drive. You have the reality drive and the party drive.
I like that analogy.
The genius of InkSock is that they train the user to access the reality drive just long enough to do their job, instantly delete it, empty the trash, and then genuinely forget the computer ever even had a second drive to begin with.
That is exactly the mechanism.
Yeah.
Doublethink is the power to hold two contradictory beliefs in one's mind simultaneously and accept both of them.
So you know you are altering reality, but through the exercise of doublethink, you satisfy yourself that reality is not violated.
It requires a conscious deception combined with complete unconscious honesty.
You have to tell deliberate lies while genuinely believing in them.
Forget any fact that has become inconvenient, and then when it becomes necessary again, draw it back from oblivion for just as long as it is needed.
It is cognitive dissonance elevated to a martial art.
And to ensure that doublethink becomes the only way to think, the party is actively dismantling the English language.
They're creating newspeak.
Winston has a conversation with a colleague named Syme, a philologist working on the new edition of the Newspeak Dictionary.
And Syme explains the project with terrifying enthusiasm. He says the whole aim of newspeak is to narrow the range of thought.
The linguistic theory here is devastatingly simple. Language shapes thought.
If you remove the words to describe a complex concept, the concept itself becomes unthinkable.
How can you organize a rebellion if the word freedom no longer exists?
In newspeak, the word free still exists, but only in statements like, this dog is free from lice, or this field is free from weeds.
It cannot be used in its old sense of political or intellectual freedom because those concepts no longer have names.
By combining complex nuances into blanket terms like crime-think, you eliminate the capacity for rationalism, objectivity, and liberty.
Syme says it perfectly. Orthodoxy means not thinking, not needing to think. Orthodoxy is unconsciousness.
Orthodoxy is unconsciousness. That line gives me chills every time.
Now let's look at how Huxley approaches the war on truth in Brave New World.
Because instead of creating a massive bureaucracy of millions of workers constantly rewriting history, the world state takes a much simpler approach.
They just ignore it.
They discard the past entirely.
Mustafa Mond quotes Henry Ford, saying history is bunk.
They don't need to rewrite old books because they simply threw them all away.
Mond explains that truth and beauty are incompatible with mass production and universal happiness.
Truth is complicated, it causes friction, it inspires radical ideas.
High art, like the works of William Shakespeare, requires tragedy and social instability to have meaning. Since the world state has eliminated tragedy, Shakespeare is just confusing noise, so they ban it.
And instead of newspeak shrinking the adult vocabulary, they control the mind from infancy through hypnopedia or sleep teaching.
Think about the developing brain as an algorithm. Hypnopedia doesn't upload data. Huxley is very specific that you can't learn empirical facts like math or geography while asleep.
Instead, it adjusts the emotional weighting of the algorithm.
Exactly. It operates on the emotional and moral centers of the brain. They play repetitive audio drops under children's pillows while they sleep. Millions of repetitions.
Alpha children wear gray. They work much harder than we do because they're so frightfully clever. I'm really awfully glad I'm a beta.
It is class prejudice and consumption habits drilled into the subconscious.
It pairs the concept of the lower classes with a feeling of superiority, or the concept of the countryside, with a subtle physiological stress response.
Huxley calls it drops of liquid sealing wax, adhering to the fabric of the brain until the brain is the wax.
The state programs the moral framework of the individual before the individual even possesses the cognitive ability to reason.
It is, as the text says, words without reason.
They don't need to destroy language like in 1984 because they have already hardwired the emotional response to the language.
If an adult in the world state hears the word family or mother, they don't feel love, they feel intense, conditioned, physical revulsion.
Let me throw another juxtaposition at you to highlight this architectural difference.
Okay, let's hear.
Think about Winston's ultimate act of rebellion at the very beginning of 1984. What does he do?
He starts writing in a diary.
He goes into an alcove in his apartment, just out of sight of the telescreen, and he uses an archaic pen with real ink to write April 4th, 1984 in a blank antique diary.
Just the mere act of trying to record objective reality.
The physical act of holding on to a personal memory in an analog format is a profound act of defiance punishable by death.
Meanwhile, in Brave New World, nobody would ever bother writing in a diary.
Not because it's illegal, but because they've been sleep-taught from birth that their internal lives have absolutely no value.
And even if they wanted to, their attention span is so fractured by soma and constant sensory input that they couldn't sit still long enough to write a sentence.
Both regimes arrive at the exact same destination, unconsciousness.
Orwell's state gets there by brutally forcing you to doubt your own memory and your own senses through trauma and doublethink.
Huxley's state gets there by softly, chemically, and psychologically programming your brain from infancy so that you never possess the capacity to question reality in the first place.
Which brings us to the climax of both novels, the psychological endgame.
Because in both of these books, the conditioning eventually fails for the protagonist.
The system encounters a glitch, a citizen rebels.
And the climax of both stories features a profound philosophical debate between the rebel and the architect of the totalitarian system.
In 1984, this endgame happens in the Ministry of Love.
Winston has been caught.
He is subjected to weeks, perhaps months, of horrific physical and psychological torture by O'Brien. They beat him, they starve him, they use electrical shocks to destroy his memory.
But O'Brien makes it clear that the party does not just want to kill Winston.
Killing a heretic is what the Inquisition did, and it only created martyrs. The party cannot allow a martyr to exist.
O'Brien says, we make the brain perfect before we blow it out.
They want to destroy the soul. They want his true, genuine love.
Precisely. They need to break the human spirit so thoroughly that Winston willingly betrays his own humanity.
He must not just obey Big Brother, he must love Big Brother.
To achieve this, they take him down to Room 101.
And Room 101 contains, famously, the worst thing in the world.
It's the ultimate bespoke torture. It isn't a generic punishment. It is customized to the specific, deepest phobia of the victim.
For Winston, it is rats.
O'Brien straps a cage of starving rats to Winston's face with a lever that will open the door and let the rats eat his eyes.
And in that moment of ultimate blinding terror, Winston does the one thing he swore to Julia he would never do.
He betrays her.
He doesn't just say the words to stop the pain. He genuinely, in his soul, desires that the rats eat Julia instead of him.
He screams, "Do it to Julia, not me. Tear her face off, strip her to the bones, not me."
It's devastating. The moment he truly wishes the pain on the woman he loves, his spirit snaps.
O'Brien told Winston earlier that they were going to squeeze him empty and then fill him with themselves.
And they do. By the end of the book, sitting in the Chestnut Tree Cafe, a tear rolls down Winston's nose as he looks at a poster of Big Brother.
He has won the victory over himself. He loves Big Brother.
The state didn't just break his body, they overwrote his soul through pure, unbearable trauma.
Now turn to the climax of Brave New World.
The rebel here is John the Savage.
He wasn't raised in the world state. He was born naturally on a savage reservation in New Mexico.
He was raised reading the complete works of William Shakespeare. He possesses a traditional, messy, passionate, pre-modern human soul.
He eventually comes to London, tries to start a rebellion by throwing away the workers' summer rations, and is arrested.
He is brought into the office of the World Controller, Mustafa Mond. They have a long, incredibly articulate debate about the nature of humanity.
And the atmosphere couldn't be more different from Room 101.
Mustafa Mond isn't torturing John. He's sitting in a comfortable office, calmly and logically explaining the system.
Mon argues that truth, science, and high art are fundamentally incompatible with happiness.
He says that a society cannot have tragedy without social instability, and without stability, civilization collapses into war and chaos.
He freely admits that the world state has sacrificed nobility, heroism, and truth for comfort.
John the Savage rejects this entirely. Armed with the romantic ideals of Shakespeare, he is disgusted by the sterile, painless, drugged-out existence of the world state.
He demands the right to experience the full spectrum of human emotion, even the painful ones.
John argues that a life without suffering is a life without meaning. He says, I don't want comfort. I want God. I want poetry. I want real danger. I want freedom. I want goodness. I want sin.
And Mustafa Mond just calmly looks at him and replies that John is simply claiming the right to be unhappy.
The right to grow old, to have syphilis, to starve, to live in constant apprehension of what may happen tomorrow.
And John stands his ground. He says, all right then, I'm claiming the right to be unhappy.
So what does this all mean when we put them head to head?
Look at the stark contrast in how the two systems react to their respective rebels.
In 1984, the state must crush Winston.
They must use horrific torture, rats, starvation, and electrical shocks, because any independent thought, any sliver of human loyalty, is a virus that poses an existential threat to Ingsoc.
The state is terrified of Winston's mind. They must obliterate it.
But in Brave New World, the system is so utterly invulnerable, so perfectly engineered, that they don't even bother punishing John the Savage.
They don't torture him. They don't try to reprogram him.
They just exile him to an island with a few other misfits who don't fit the mold.
The system doesn't need to break him. It just isolates him. Knowing his Shakespearean ideas can never possibly infect a population that is genetically and chemically immune to them.
It forces us to ask a terrifying question about the fundamental nature of humanity.
Orwell's nightmare is built on the assumption that human nature is, as O'Brien says, infinitely malleable through trauma, pain, and deprivation.
If you apply enough violent pressure, you can reshape a human into anything.
Huxley's nightmare makes an entirely different, perhaps more realistic assumption. It assumes that human nature doesn't need to be molded by violent force, because it can be entirely bypassed.
You can hack the human animal through chemistry, prenatal conditioning, and the endless satiation of base desires.
We have covered a massive amount of philosophical and architectural ground today. Let's distill the mechanisms we've unpacked.
Orwell's 1984 controls humanity through deprivation. It uses fear, physical pain, constant panoptic surveillance, the violent destruction of language, and manufactured scarcity to forcibly break the human spirit.
Huxley's Brave New World controls humanity through oversaturation. It uses pleasure, comfort, state-sponsored drugs, genetic engineering, and endless distraction to render the human spirit completely irrelevant.
And understanding the distinction between these two models isn't just an academic exercise.
It is a necessary tool for evaluating the architecture of the real world around you.
Recognizing whether your thoughts and behaviors are being manipulated by the things you fear, the Orwellian model, or by the things you desire, the Huxleyan model, is the absolute first step toward maintaining your own intellectual freedom in the modern age.
Which brings us back to the choice you made at the very beginning of this deep dive.
I want to leave you with one final scenario to mull over. Look at the trajectory of our technology, our algorithms, and our political systems.
If a totalitarian regime wanted to take complete control of our society right now, today,
would they really bother going through the immense effort, expense, and political risk of building physical torture chambers like Room 101?
would they risk the unpredictable, explosive backlash of a boot stamping on a human face?
Or would they just offer us an endless, frictionless feed of personalized, algorithmically generated entertainment, feeding our outrage and our desires simultaneously until we completely forgot how to look away?